Your soulmate just wrote you a secret love letter. It disappears in 5 minutes. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because somewhere at this very moment, your soulmate is staring at a blank page, completely unaware that the next few minutes are about to change everything. If you enjoy spiritual and uplifting content, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. And listen to this. They didn't sit down intending to write a love letter. They weren't planning a confession. They weren't searching for dramatic words. In fact, they were trying to do the exact opposite. They were trying to distract themselves. Trying to focus on something else. Trying to ignore the thoughts that had been quietly following them for days. Maybe even longer. But something strange happened. The harder they tried not to think about you, the more impossible it became. And your heart needs this right now because some feelings don't disappear when ignored. Some feelings grow stronger. Quietly. Patiently. Silently. Waiting for the moment they can no longer be hidden. That moment had finally arrived. And listen to this. The room felt unusually quiet. The world outside seemed distant. The distractions that usually occupied their attention suddenly lost their power. For the first time in a long time, they were alone with their thoughts. Completely alone. No noise. No interruptions. No excuses. Just honesty. Pure honesty. And that honesty led them somewhere unexpected. It led them directly to you. At first they tried resisting it. They told themselves it was nothing. Just another thought. Just another memory. Just another passing feeling. But the feeling didn't pass. It stayed. And stayed. And stayed. Until eventually they stopped fighting it. And your heart needs this right now because there comes a moment when resisting the truth becomes more exhausting than accepting it. Your soulmate had reached that moment. The resistance ended. The honesty began. And listen to this. Their eyes drifted toward a blank piece of paper. Nothing special. Just an empty page. Yet somehow that empty page felt important. Almost as if it had been waiting. Waiting for something. Waiting for words. Waiting for truth. Waiting for a confession. Without fully understanding why, they picked up a pen. And for several moments, they simply stared. Thinking. Remembering. Feeling. The pen hovered above the page. Yet no words appeared. Not immediately. Because the feelings were larger than language. The emotions were deeper than simple sentences. And your heart needs this right now because sometimes the hardest thing in the world is describing what the heart already understands. That was exactly the challenge they faced. How do you explain something that grew gradually? How do you explain a connection that became meaningful before you even noticed it? How do you explain feelings that arrived quietly and stayed? They didn't know. But they tried anyway. And listen to this. The first sentence finally appeared. Slowly. Carefully. Almost nervously. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't perfect. It simply said, "I don't know why I'm writing this." The moment those words appeared, something shifted. A wall inside them cracked. The pressure eased. The truth began flowing. And suddenly the second sentence became easier. Then the third. Then the fourth. Then another. And another. And another. Before long, the page was no longer empty. The letter had begun. And your heart needs this right now, because once the heart finally starts speaking, it often reveals far more than expected. That is exactly what happened. Memories started appearing. Small memories. Simple memories. Moments that seemed insignificant at the time, yet somehow remained unforgettable. The first conversation that lingered longer than it should have. The first moment your name unexpectedly appeared in their thoughts. The first time they found themselves smiling because of something you said. The first time they realized you mattered. Not in a dramatic way. Not all at once. Just enough to notice. Just enough to wonder. Just enough to remember. And listen to this. The more they wrote, the more details returned. Details they thought they had forgotten. Tiny moments. Tiny memories. Tiny emotions. Yet every one of them carried meaning. Every one of them seemed connected. Every one of them pointed toward the same truth. You had become more important than they realized. And your heart needs this right now, because meaningful connections rarely announce themselves. They grow quietly. They grow naturally. They grow through ordinary moments. Until one day the heart looks back and realizes something extraordinary happened. That realization was unfolding right now. Line by line. Sentence by sentence. Memory by memory. And listen to this. The letter continued growing. The words became more honest. The emotions became more vulnerable. The truth became more difficult to hide. At first they wrote about memories. Then they wrote about feelings. Then they wrote about changes. The changes you unknowingly created. How certain days felt brighter. How certain moments felt warmer. How certain memories felt more meaningful. And with every new paragraph, one realization became clearer. This wasn't just a letter. It was a confession disguised as reflection. A truth disguised as memory. A feeling disguised as a story. And your heart needs this right now, because sometimes people reveal their deepest emotions without realizing they are doing it. That is exactly what was happening. Every sentence revealed something. Every memory revealed something. Every word revealed something. Until eventually there was nowhere left to hide. And listen to this. Just as they reached the bottom of the page, something unexpected happened. A message suddenly appeared. Small. Simple. Impossible to ignore. At first they thought they imagined it. Then they blinked. Looked again. The message remained. It said, "This letter will disappear in 5 minutes." Their hearts skipped. Their breath paused. Their eyes widened. 5 minutes? Only 5 minutes? The warning remained. Cold. Silent. Certain. And suddenly everything changed. Because this wasn't simply a letter anymore. This was a countdown. A race against time. A race to finish the truth before the truth disappeared forever. And your heart needs this right now because some opportunities arrive without warning. Some moments demand courage immediately. Some truths refuse to wait. Your soulmate realized they had only 5 minutes left. 5 minutes before every word vanished. 5 minutes before every confession faded. 5 minutes before every hidden feeling disappeared from the page forever. Yet strangely, they didn't stop writing. They wrote faster. More honestly. More openly. Because they finally understood something important. Some truths deserve to exist. Even if only for a moment. If this message is touching your heart, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your soulmate just wrote you a secret love letter. It disappears in 5 minutes. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after the first page was filled with memories, reflections, and emotions they never expected to write down, your soulmate realized something surprising. The most important part of the letter wasn't written directly on the page. It was hidden between the lines. And listen to this. The memories were real. The stories were real. The words were real. But beneath every sentence lived a deeper truth they had not fully admitted to themselves. A truth that had been quietly growing for longer than they realized. At first, they tried keeping the letter focused on the past. Simple memories. Simple observations. Simple reflections. But every time they described a memory, an emotion appeared. Every time they described an emotion, another memory appeared. The two had become impossible to separate. And your heart needs this right now because meaningful feelings often hide inside ordinary moments. A conversation. A smile. A brief interaction. A moment that seems small at the time, yet later becomes unforgettable. That is exactly what was happening. Your soulmate found themselves writing about moments nobody else would understand. Moments that seemed insignificant to everyone else. Yet somehow carried enormous meaning. And listen to this. They wrote about a day they unexpectedly thought about you. A moment they unexpectedly smiled because of you. A conversation that stayed in their mind much longer than it should have. At first they tried dismissing those memories. After all, they seemed ordinary. Yet the more they wrote, the more obvious something became. Ordinary memories don't usually survive this long. Ordinary moments don't usually leave such strong impressions. Ordinary people don't usually return to someone's thoughts over and over again. That realization made them pause. For several moments they simply stared at the page. Thinking. Reflecting. Understanding. And your heart needs this right now because sometimes writing reveals truths we did not know we were carrying. The act of putting emotions into words forces honesty. It forces clarity. It forces understanding. That understanding was beginning to arrive. Slowly. Steadily. Powerfully. And listen to this. The letter continued growing. Paragraph after paragraph. Memory after memory. Yet something was changing. The writing was becoming more personal. More vulnerable. More honest. The walls they normally kept around their heart were slowly disappearing. Sentence by sentence. Line by line. Truth by truth. And your heart needs this right now because honesty often begins quietly. It doesn't arrive all at once. It reveals itself gradually. Like sunlight entering a dark room. That was exactly what was happening. The deeper they wrote, the clearer everything became. And listen to this. At one point they stopped writing entirely. Not because they had nothing left to say. Because they suddenly realized how emotional they felt. The page in front of them was no longer a collection of memories. It had become something else. Something much bigger. A reflection of their heart. A reflection of their feelings. A reflection of truths they had quietly avoided. That realization frightened them. Yet it also brought relief. Because your heart needs this right now because there is freedom in honesty. Even when honesty feels vulnerable. Even when honesty feels uncertain. Even when honesty changes everything. Your soulmate was beginning to experience that freedom. And listen to this. They returned to writing. This time with fewer filters. This time with less hesitation. This time with more courage. The next sentences arrived naturally. Almost as if they had been waiting. Waiting for permission. Waiting for space. Waiting to finally exist. They wrote about how certain memories felt different now. How certain moments seemed brighter when viewed through the lens of time. How some people unexpectedly become important without announcing themselves. Without warning. Without intention. Simply through their presence. And your heart needs this right now because some connections grow naturally. They don't demand attention. They don't force themselves into existence. They simply develop. Quietly. Patiently. Until one day they become impossible to ignore. That was the realization forming inside the letter. And listen to this. As the countdown continued, they noticed something strange. The more honest they became, the less afraid they felt. The more truth appeared, the less uncertainty remained. The more vulnerable the words became, the lighter their heart felt. Because for the first time in a long time, they weren't hiding. They weren't pretending. They weren't minimizing what they felt. They were simply allowing the truth to exist. And your heart needs this right now because truth has a way of simplifying things. Not by removing complexity. But by removing denial. Your soulmate was beginning to understand that. And listen to this. The second page soon became filled. Every sentence connected to another. Every memory connected to another. Every feeling connected to another. Until eventually one realization became impossible to avoid. The letter was no longer about memories. The letter was no longer about reflection. The letter was no longer about the past. The letter had become a confession. Not a dramatic confession. Not a reckless confession. A quiet confession. An honest confession. The kind that arrives after months of understanding. The kind that arrives after countless moments of reflection. The kind that arrives when the heart finally stops arguing with itself. And your heart needs this right now because sometimes the deepest truths hide between the lines long before they are spoken directly. That is exactly where the truth was hiding now. Waiting. Growing. Becoming stronger. With every passing second. And as the countdown continued ticking away, your soulmate realized something important. They were no longer afraid of the truth itself. They were only afraid of running out of time before fully writing it. Because some feelings deserve to be expressed. Some truths deserve to be written. And some love letters become unforgettable not because of the words they contain, but because of the courage it took to write them. Join our spiritual community by subscribing and keeping notifications on, so you never miss a message meant for your soul. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now. Because as the countdown continued and the pages of the letter became filled with memories, something unexpected happened. Your soulmate stopped writing about the past. And started writing about the truth. And listen to this. Until now, the letter had been safe. Comfortable. Careful. It focused on memories. Moments. Stories. Reflections. But deep down, they knew those memories were only the surface. Beneath every story lived a feeling. Beneath every memory lived an emotion. Beneath every sentence lived a truth. A truth they had been avoiding for much longer than they wanted to admit. And your heart needs this right now because there comes a moment when a person becomes tired of hiding from themselves. Tired of pretending. Tired of minimizing what they feel. Tired of carrying important words alone. That moment had finally arrived. And listen to this. For several seconds they stopped writing. The pen rested on the page. The room became completely silent. Even the countdown seemed distant. Because they were standing at an emotional crossroads. One path led back to safety. The other led toward honesty. The safe path was familiar. The honest path was terrifying. Yet something inside them already knew which path they needed to choose. And your heart needs this right now because truth often asks for courage before it offers peace. That is exactly what was happening. Your soulmate could feel the truth pushing forward. Gently. Patiently. Persistently. Waiting to finally be acknowledged. And listen to this. They looked back over everything they had written. Every memory. Every paragraph. Every reflection. Suddenly they noticed something. Every story somehow led back to the same person. Every meaningful memory somehow included the same presence. Every emotional moment somehow connected to you. At first they tried denying it. Then they tried explaining it. Then they finally accepted it. Because there was no other explanation left. And your heart needs this right now because acceptance changes everything. The moment someone stops fighting their feelings, clarity arrives. The moment someone stops running, understanding arrives. The moment someone stops denying the truth, honesty begins. That honesty was beginning now. And listen to this. The next sentence appeared slowly. Almost carefully. Almost cautiously. As if they were testing the weight of the words before allowing them to exist. The sentence read, "I never expected you to matter this much." The moment those words appeared, something shifted inside them. A wall collapsed. A burden lifted. A truth finally received permission to exist. And your heart needs this right now because some truths feel powerful not because they are dramatic, but because they are real. This truth was real. Painfully real. Beautifully real. Unavoidably real. And listen to this. After writing that sentence, the rest became easier. Not easy. Just easier. Because the hardest part of honesty is usually the beginning. Once the truth starts speaking, it often reveals far more than expected. That is exactly what happened. The next confession appeared. Then another. Then another. Each one more honest than the last. Each one more vulnerable than the last. Each one revealing another hidden corner of their heart. And your heart needs this right now because vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage. Real courage. The courage to allow another person to see the parts of yourself you usually keep hidden. Your soulmate was showing those parts now. Line by line. Word by word. Truth by truth. And listen to this. They admitted something else. Something they had never fully admitted before. There were days when they thought about you unexpectedly. Days when your memory appeared without warning. Days when a song reminded them of you. A place reminded them of you. A conversation reminded them of you. They never planned those moments. They never searched for them. Yet somehow they always happened. And every time they did, the same feeling returned. A feeling they could no longer ignore. Because your heart needs this right now because meaningful connections leave echoes behind. Echoes in memories. Echoes in thoughts. Echoes in ordinary moments. Your soulmate was beginning to realize just how many echoes of you existed inside their life. And listen to this. The countdown continued. 4 minutes remained. Then 3. Then a little less. The pressure should have frightened them. Yet strangely, it created freedom. Because suddenly there was no time left for pretending. No time left for overthinking. No time left for editing every emotion. Only honesty remained. Pure honesty. And honesty has a way of revealing extraordinary things. And your heart needs this right now because some people spend years avoiding truths they could discover in a single honest moment. Your soulmate was living that moment right now. Every sentence brought more clarity. Every confession brought more understanding. Every word brought more peace. Until eventually they reached the sentence they feared most. The sentence they had been circling around from the very beginning. The sentence hidden inside every memory. The sentence hidden inside every reflection. The sentence hidden inside every feeling. And listen to this. Their hand hesitated. Their heart raced. Their breath slowed. For a moment they almost erased everything. Almost. But not quite. Because the truth had already traveled too far. The truth deserved to exist. The truth deserved to be written. And your heart needs this right now because there comes a point where honesty becomes more important than comfort. Your soulmate had reached that point. The sentence appeared. Simple. Direct. Powerful. It read, "No matter how many times I tried convincing myself otherwise, my heart always found its way back to you." The moment those words appeared, everything changed. The letter changed. The atmosphere changed. The meaning changed. Because now there was no hiding. No confusion. No uncertainty. Only truth. And listen to this. For several moments they simply stared at the sentence. Reading it. Feeling it. Accepting it. The words felt frightening. Yet they also felt liberating. Because for the first time, the truth existed outside their heart. Not hidden. Not protected. Not denied. Written. Visible. Real. And your heart needs this right now because some confessions are not really for another person. They are for ourselves. They are moments where we stop running from what we already know. Moments where we finally acknowledge what has been true all along. That was exactly what was happening. And listen to this. The letter continued. The emotions deepened. The honesty expanded. Yet the biggest confession had already happened. Not because it contained the most dramatic words. Because it contained the most genuine truth. A truth built through time. Through memories. Through reflection. Through understanding. A truth that refused to disappear. Even when ignored. Even when questioned. Even when postponed. And as the countdown continued ticking toward its final minutes, your soulmate realized something they never expected. The letter was no longer changing because of what they were writing. The letter was changing because of what they were finally willing to admit. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after pages of memories, confessions, and truths they never expected to write, your soulmate finally reached the moment they had been avoiding from the very beginning. The countdown. And listen to this. Until now, the letter felt permanent. Every sentence felt solid. Every memory felt safe. Every confession felt protected by the page. But suddenly everything changed. A small notification appeared again at the bottom. The same message. The same warning. The same reminder. 2 minutes remaining. For a moment, they simply stared at it. Silent. Motionless. Thinking. Because the reality of the situation finally became impossible to ignore. The letter was disappearing. And your heart needs this right now because some moments become valuable precisely because they cannot last forever. Some opportunities matter because they are temporary. Some truths feel more powerful because they exist for only a brief moment. That realization hit them all at once. And listen to this. The first signs appeared slowly. The ink near the top of the page became lighter. The oldest sentences began fading. The earliest memories became softer. Almost as if the letter had started dissolving into the air. At first, the changes were small. Almost invisible. Yet they were happening. The countdown had begun. The disappearance had begun. And suddenly every word felt precious. Every sentence felt irreplaceable. Every confession felt sacred. Because your heart needs this right now, because we often take things for granted until we realize they may not remain forever. That was exactly what your soulmate was experiencing. And listen to this. Instead of panicking, they began reading. From the beginning. Slowly. Carefully. They reread the first sentence. The nervous sentence. The uncertain sentence. The sentence that started everything. I don't know why I'm writing this. Reading it now made them smile. Because they finally understood why they wrote it. They wrote it because the truth needed somewhere to go. They wrote it because silence had become too heavy. They wrote it because their heart was tired of carrying everything alone. And your heart needs this right now because honesty often arrives long before courage fully understands it. The heart knows. The soul knows. The truth knows. Even when the mind is still catching up. And listen to this. As they continued reading, memories returned. Every paragraph unlocked another feeling. Every sentence unlocked another realization. The letter had become more than words. It had become a mirror. A mirror showing them everything they had been carrying inside. Everything they had been avoiding. Everything they had been trying not to admit. And suddenly they saw it clearly. The entire journey. From confusion. To understanding. From uncertainty. To clarity. From silence. To honesty. And your heart needs this right now because sometimes people do not realize how much they have grown until they look back. That is exactly what was happening. The letter revealed growth. The letter revealed courage. The letter revealed truth. And listen to this. 90 seconds remaining. The countdown continued. The fading became more noticeable. Words near the top of the page were disappearing. Sentences became incomplete. Paragraphs became fragmented. Yet strangely, the most emotional parts remained untouched. Almost as if the letter itself understood what mattered most. The memories faded. The feelings remained. The details faded. The truth remained. The ordinary words disappeared. The important words survived. And your heart needs this right now because genuine emotions often outlast everything surrounding them. Time passes. Details fade. Circumstances change. Yet certain truths remain exactly where they began. Inside the heart. And listen to this. Your soulmate reached the middle of the letter. The section where they finally stopped hiding. The section where honesty took control. The section where fear lost its power. Reading those words again felt overwhelming. Not because they were dramatic. Because they were real. Every sentence carried authenticity. Every confession carried vulnerability. Every paragraph carried courage. And suddenly they realized something. The letter was never really about you. Not entirely. The letter was also about them. About becoming honest. About accepting reality. About finally acknowledging feelings they had been running from. And your heart needs this right now because some letters are not written to change another person. Some letters are written to change the person writing them. That was exactly what had happened. And listen to this. 60 seconds remaining. Only 1 minute left. The page continued fading. The edges of the words dissolved. The ink weakened. The countdown moved relentlessly forward. Yet oddly enough, they felt calm. Peaceful. Certain. Because something important had already happened. The truth had finally been spoken. Maybe only to a piece of paper. Maybe only to themselves. But spoken nonetheless. And once truth is spoken, it changes everything. Because your heart needs this right now because there is freedom in honesty. Freedom that fear can never provide. Freedom that silence can never provide. Freedom that only truth can create. Your soulmate was feeling that freedom now. Perhaps for the first time. And listen to this. As the final seconds approached, they stopped focusing on what was disappearing. Instead, they focused on what remained. The courage remained. The understanding remained. The memories remained. The feelings remained. The truth remained. And suddenly they understood the lesson hidden inside the entire experience. The letter was never meant to last forever. The paper was temporary. The words were temporary. The ink was temporary. But the emotions behind them were not. And your heart needs this right now because genuine feelings do not depend on paper. They do not depend on pages. They do not depend on letters. They live somewhere much deeper. Somewhere the countdown cannot reach. Somewhere time cannot erase. Somewhere disappearance cannot touch. Inside the heart. And listen to this. 30 seconds remaining. The page was almost empty now. Large portions had vanished. Entire paragraphs had disappeared. Only fragments remained. Yet among those fragments stood one powerful realization. Every sentence they truly needed survived longer than everything else. Every meaningful truth remained visible. Every important confession remained readable. As if the letter itself wanted to make sure they remembered. And remember they would. Because some truths never need paper to survive. They only need acknowledgement. They only need acceptance. They only need courage. And courage had finally arrived. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because the countdown is almost over. Only a few seconds remain. The pages are fading. The ink is disappearing. The words are becoming impossible to read. Yet somehow, at the very moment everything should be ending, something much bigger is beginning. And listen to this. Your soulmate sits quietly in front of the letter. No longer writing. No longer editing. No longer questioning. Simply watching. Watching the words slowly disappear from the page. Watching memories fade into blankness. Watching confessions vanish into silence. Watching pieces of their heart dissolve before their eyes. Yet strangely, they aren't sad. Not anymore. Because your heart needs this right now, because they finally understand something important. The purpose of the letter was never permanence. The purpose of the letter was honesty. The purpose of the letter was courage. The purpose of the letter was truth. And all three have already succeeded. And listen to this. As the final moments approach, they begin reading what remains. Only fragments survive now. Small pieces. Broken sentences. Scattered confessions. Yet every surviving piece seems connected to the same realization. You mattered. You mattered more than they expected. More than they planned. More than they understood. And perhaps that realization was the true reason the letter existed at all. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes people spend months trying to understand their feelings. Sometimes they spend years. Sometimes they search for certainty in 1,000 different places. Only to discover the answer was quietly waiting inside them the entire time. Your soulmate has finally discovered that answer. And listen to this. The page continues fading. The memories continue fading. The details continue fading. Yet one strange thing keeps happening. The emotional sentences remain. Not perfectly. Not completely. But longer than everything else. Almost as if the letter itself refuses to let go of the most important truths. The first confession remains visible. The first honest admission remains visible. The first vulnerable sentence remains visible. And every time they reread those words, they feel something unexpected. Relief. Because the truth is no longer trapped inside them. The truth exists now. Maybe only briefly. Maybe only for these final seconds. But it exists. And your heart needs this right now, because truth changes a person the moment it is acknowledged. Even if nobody else hears it. Even if nobody else reads it. Even if it disappears moments later. The act of speaking it changes everything. That is exactly what happened. And listen to this. The countdown reaches 20 seconds. 20. 19. 18. The page is nearly blank. Most of the paragraphs have disappeared. Most of the memories have vanished. Most of the stories have faded away. Yet your soulmate keeps smiling. Because they finally understand that the memories were never the important part. The feelings were. The paper was never the important part. The truth was. The letter was never the important part. The courage was. And your heart needs this right now, because courage leaves permanent marks on the soul. Long after moments disappear. Long after opportunities pass. long after words fade away. That courage remains. And listen to this. They suddenly remember how the letter began. With uncertainty. With hesitation. With fear. A blank page. A nervous hand. A heart full of questions. Yet look at where the journey led. Not toward confusion. Toward clarity. Not toward doubt. Toward understanding. Not toward fear. Toward acceptance. The letter changed them. More than they ever expected. Because writing the truth forced them to see it. Forced them to accept it. Forced them to stop running from it. And your heart needs this right now because acceptance is one of the most powerful experiences a person can have. Acceptance creates peace. Acceptance creates freedom. Acceptance creates healing. Your soulmate is feeling all three. For perhaps the first time in a very long time. And listen to this. 10 seconds remain. The page is almost completely blank. Only one section survives. One final paragraph. One final message. One final truth. The truth they struggled most to write. The truth they almost erased. The truth they almost kept hidden forever. Yet somehow it remains visible longer than everything else. And they understand why. Because it is the most genuine thing they have ever written. The most vulnerable thing they have ever admitted. The most honest thing they have ever allowed themselves to feel. And your heart needs this right now because genuine truths have a way of surviving. Even when everything else disappears. And listen to this. 5 seconds remain. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. The final message glows softly on the page. Your soulmate reads it one last time. Slowly. Carefully. As if trying to memorize every word before it vanishes forever. The message says, if these words disappear before they ever reach you, I hope the feelings behind them somehow find their way to your heart. Because meeting you changed something inside me, and no amount of time can erase the gratitude I feel for that. They smile. Close their eyes. Take a deep breath. And then, the countdown reaches 0. The page becomes blank. The ink disappears. The letter is gone. Completely gone. No evidence remains. No pages remain. No words remain. Nothing. At least on the surface. Because your heart needs this right now because while the letter disappeared, the truth did not. The memories did not. The feelings did not. The courage did not. Everything important survived. Not on paper. Inside the heart. And listen to this. As your soulmate stands and walks away, they realize something beautiful. The letter was never meant to last forever. The letter was only a bridge. A bridge between denial and acceptance. A bridge between silence and honesty. A bridge between fear and courage. And now that bridge has done its job. The paper disappeared. But the person who wrote it is no longer the same. They are lighter. Stronger. clearer, freer. Because they finally stopped hiding from the truth. And that truth will remain long after the final word has faded away. Before you go, please like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. May peace, light, and blessings always be with you.